Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I want to talk about Dungeons & Dragons. I want to talk about Vecna, Eve of Ruin, Chapter 8, and today we're going to talk about Uvashar, the Raksasha, Red Belvedere Casino Pitmaster, who is in charge of this themed attraction, the Abalbaster Racetrack. Now, what is the Abalbaster Racetrack? Well, the Abalbaster Racetrack is where your Dragon Master character can race a nightmare against other people on Avernus, the first circle of hell. That's pretty cool, all right? So basically, adventurers are adventurers, and part of being an adventurer is incredible risk, right? So these guys have come here to take the Rod of Seven Pieces from Tiamat, right? But even just getting to where they could take the Rod of Seven Parts from Tiamat, they have to face adventures, right? And so these themed attractions, so right now, the Dragon Masters need to get one Pitmaster to give them an invitation into Dragon's Pride, this invitation-only section of the Red Belvedere Casino. And so basically, Uvashar is a Raksasha, and Uvashar is over the Abalbaster Racetrack. So this is just one attraction, and there are 4 attractions here in Red Belvedere, major ones, and the player characters can go in and play this, right? And what's great is your table is going to be different from this table, is going to be different from this table, right? You guys may come in and your Dragon Master characters, Dungeon Masters, like, you're in the Red Belvedere. Do you want to go to the Viridian Den? Do you want to go to the Abalbaster Racetrack? Do you want to go to the Stygian Maze? Do you want to go to the Scarlet Coliseum? And each Dragon Master group might do one of those. They might do 2 of those. They might do 3 of those. They might do all of them. But even if they chose to do all of them, even if they chose to do the same number, they would do them in a different sequence, and it would come out differently. And this is a huge part of why Dungeons & Dragons is so special, is these aspects of this parameterization of these things, right? Well, and the thing that's really interesting is, if you play through, and when you're like, well, Scott, lots of tabletop role-playing games do this. They don't. It's not the same. So let's say you do this in OSE, right? So you have gone through and you go through this adventure, and there's 4 different permutations, right? Here's the thing. This is why Dungeons & Dragons wins, and this is really important to understand why the OSR and the indies are not actually part of the tabletop role-playing game industry at all. The tabletop role-playing game industry is D&D alone. And the reason why is, if you play through Vecna, Eve of Ruin, right, there are going to be literally millions of people who have played Stranger Things, and you could tell them your story, right? And you're like, oh yeah, well, I'm playing in a Vecna adventure right now. And they could never played a single hour of Dungeons & Dragons. They're like, oh really? So Vecna, like, what are you trying to do? And you're like, well, we're trying to defeat Vecna, and we went to the first circle of hell. And they're like, oh, I know what the 9 circles of hell are. That you're talking about Dante's Inferno, right? And you're like, yes, it's very similar, right? And so people and that's my point, is you try to talk to anybody about the adventure you went through in OSE, nobody even knows what OSE is. Nobody's going to understand, right? Whereas people who haven't even played Dungeons & Dragons have already been cued to listen to your story, right? And people who have played Vecna, Eve of Ruin, which are literally millions of players. There's like 15 million Dungeons & Dragons Dragon Masters and Dungeon Masters out there. They're like, oh, hey, I went through this and we did this, this, and this. This was our sequence through. What was your sequence through? And that's important, right? So one thing I love is with this Abalbaster Racetrack, your Dragon Master players get there and you pay your talent, and then you get to race a nightmare. Literally this hellbound horse, exactly like Venger had, right? And you're racing them, right? Well, what happens if you fall off? You know, what happens if you can't control your nightmare? Well, guess what? You fall off your nightmare stomps you to death while blowing its own flame breath at you, right? That's what happens, right? Because this isn't your grandpa's, this ain't the Preakness, right? Like, this is Dungeons and Dragons. That's why we don't call it Dungeons and Doilies, right? If you fail, this thing will stomp your skull into the ground and you are dead, right? And then what do? Well, you start to reflect on the sorrow of death, and you grow as a human being, right? Literally, you as the Dragon Master, as the Dungeons and Dragons player, you have a chance to explore death and loss and sorrow, because you're not stuck at a table with some sad sack dungeon master who wants you to swill another beer and have fun, right? Like, because you're here to learn, grow, improve, and transform, right? That's Uvashar. He's a Raksasha. He's in charge of the Abalbaster Racetrack, which is an evil attraction at the Red Belvedere, which is on Avernus, which is the first circle of hell. Every part of that is cool because Dungeons and Dragons is a layer cake of cool. In my humble opinion, Dungeons and Dragons is a layer cake of cool. Every word you just heard is my humble opinion. What's important is when I get to hear your humble opinion. When you get in the comments and send your traffic, please consider liking and subscribing, and have a fetch millennium.